If I could go back and start my life in Denmark all over again in the year 2025, I would do a few things very differently. When you move abroad, you don't know what you don't know. And in Denmark, that can be especially true. My name is Derek Hartman, and I've been living here in Denmark since 2017. And if you're new here, welcome. My channel and all of my content is about life in Denmark for internationals. So today I want to share the top lessons that I've learned, including the mistakes that I would avoid and the smarter choices that I would make if I was moving to Denmark right now. Hopefully, this will help you feel more prepared and a little less overwhelmed if and when you take the leap yourself. First up, I'll talk about learning Danish. I would probably do some things differently. Many people will tell you not to wait until after you settle and to start on day one, which I think is fine, but there are some caveats and things that I've noticed. If you're moving here from a country where English is not the mother tongue and you didn't grow up as a first language English speaker, then I would work on perfecting your English before you come here. I absolutely think you should learn Danish. However, I think that if you're moving here and you have average English but no Danish, you'll be much better than if you have average Danish and can't speak English very well. So if that is your situation, I would definitely make sure you're doing that. I also think that you should take advantage of the free or subsidized language schools that are available. Now, for the first 3 years that you're living in Denmark, you'll be able to take Danish lessons. That will be covered for free, although you may have to put a deposit down. But it's important that you actually commit and know that realistically, you may need some other help. You're probably going to have to put in more time, either with a tutor or some other private lessons in order to really become fluent. So if you need to learn Danish a little faster because maybe you have a Danish family that you're going to be reuniting with, Danish in-laws, then you're really gonna have to put in a little bit of extra effort and maybe even do some of those extra things like coursework. Basic Danish helps with your daily life. I definitely think at the supermarket, the doctor's office, you're going to need to know Danish. Even just speaking to your neighbors, if that does happen, you're going to need to know some Danish. It's really important for your daily life to at least know some. But keep in mind, and something that I've really learned is to give yourself some grace and know that everybody learns at their own speed and for different purposes. So you may have something that makes it more urgent, like your in-laws, or that you have children that are going to go to school and come home speaking Danish, and you're going to have to speak Danish with their teachers. Then you'll have a little bit more urgency. So make sure that you're carving out the time if that is your situation. But also know that everybody comes here with different pressures and different reasons that they need to learn Danish at their own speed. With that said, people will often switch to English, but it shows that you've made some effort if you can at least reply a little bit in Danish. And if you're learning and really committed, it's perfectly fine to say, "Jeg lærer dansk, I'm learning Danish, and I'd like to continue speaking in Danish. It's important that I get the practice." In certain situations, and you'll learn which are the right and the wrong ones for that, it's totally fine for you to say that. As a native English speaker, it's also important to keep in mind that even though Danes can be very good at English, you may hear people speaking English that sound like they're also native speakers. They're usually speaking English as a second, third, or fourth language. So keep that in mind as you're communicating with them. You may have to simplify the way that you speak. You may also have to avoid using turns of phrase. You may have to speak a little bit slower and know that there may be some cultural misunderstandings because often people will translate directly from Danish into English, or they may not have the sensibilities or the way to detect things in the tone of how they're speaking that you might as a native speaker. So all kinds of different examples of people coming here in different ways. I wish that I knew some of these things that apply to me directly on learning Danish and the language. When I moved here, I wish that I understood housing better. And if I was moving here this year, it's something that I would research and learn on. Because housing is competitive, especially in the bigger cities like Copenhagen, Aarhus. And it's important that as you're looking for an apartment, that you're using a reliable platform. So Boligportal, for example, or some of these other platforms are really what you want to stick to. You'll find a lot of online postings, especially in groups that are geared for expats and internationals living in Denmark that you can find on Facebook and other social media groups. There can be some things in there that are a little tricky or scammy, and you want to avoid those. It can also be really good if you learn a little bit about housing associations, the boligforening, so that you know what to expect once you're living in a Danish building, or learning what to do and record if you're going to be renting there, so that you're not going to be taken advantage of or maybe lose your deposit, which can be a hefty amount of money. So again, just sort of understanding a little bit about housing before you move here is extremely important. Another thing I wish that I knew about housing is that as an international, you are able to buy a home in Denmark. There is one additional form that you need to fill out, but essentially, if you haven't been here for 5 years and you come from outside of Denmark, you are able to purchase a home here or a property here if it's going to be your primary residence. It's just a technicality that you have to have one more form filled out in the process, but it's very easy. And there's a little bit of confusion, and people will often say you can't do that, but you can. And a lot of people maybe have that problem where they think that they're not able to buy a property here if that's their desire, but you can. And that's something that I wish I had kind of read up on as well when I first moved here. Another thing that I would do differently if I was moving to Denmark in 2025 is that I would bring less. I feel like I brought too many things over. Even though I didn't ship all of my belongings at once, I still felt like I overpacked a little bit. And look, there are many ways that you can make things easier for yourself, especially if you're moving here temporarily at first and then easing into life here. I came here first for a 6-month period to see if my partner and I were going to be happy living here. And then it turned into a 2-year contract. And then we've been here for now 8.5 years, but I still felt like I overpacked, and I brought things that I didn't need to bring because I was better off buying them here. And some of those essentials like rain gear and bikes and even home goods and furnishings would have been much better off if you don't bring them with you, because you're probably going to want something else here. And look, IKEA exists everywhere. So if you need some essentials in the very beginning, you can look for a furnished apartment, or you can make that IKEA run in the beginning. And then slowly start to build things literally and sometimes figuratively to get your housing situation and the other parts of your life the way that you want them. So maybe don't bring as much as you think that you're going to need until you really know what you're going to want in a house and in a life that's in Denmark, and maybe a little bit different than where you're coming from. Some dumb things that I brought were an Instant Pot, and it had a different voltage, and it blew a fuse the first time that I plugged it in. So that was a real waste of moving something over here. Also, keep in mind, Denmark has a very strong secondhand culture. So if there's something that you think you might be missing, you may be able to buy or upcycle something when you get here without blowing your entire budget on that item. And speaking of budget, that's something that I wish that I'd considered, and that if I was moving here in 2025, I would really put a reality check on. Because a lot of people know, and there's a lot of videos about it, Denmark is expensive. And especially when you're looking at a housing deposit and buying new items, there can be a lot of things that you need to purchase in the first few months that you're living here. So I would make sure that you're planning for those hidden costs, things like furniture, bikes, public transportation passes that you may not be thinking about now. Of course, you're always going to have your other things that you're going to need to be spending money on, like groceries, eating out, and that may cost more than you expect as well. Yes, your salary may be higher to reflect that, but keep in mind that the things that you hear are most likely true. Things are a bit more expensive here. That's why often you may have to change your habits. I know personally, I eat out a lot less than I did when I lived back in the United States. It's a little bit more for you to go out to eat wherever you're coming from. That's why I think a lot of people will go out to eat more for a special occasion instead of going out 3 or 4 nights a week. So be prepared that you may want to eat at home. And that's something that I would probably do more if I was moving here in 2025 compared to when I first arrived. On that note, a budget-friendly way to get around is biking, and I wish that I had been a little bit more prepared for biking. Now, it's something that I would definitely change if I was moving here in 2025, because a bike is almost freedom in Denmark. You kind of get around faster, and it's cheaper than public transportation. Although, of course, depending on where you move, you may not be able to get around only by a bike. But when I first moved here, I didn't really think much about it, and I was really happy eventually when I did get a bike. And you can maybe even look at getting a secondhand bike at first because it may be cheaper, a little bit less risk if it gets stolen. But the sooner you learn how to bike properly, including how to bike safely, all of the hand signals that you need to know and bike safety rules, as well as knowing that you need to have lights on that bike in the winter. It's just going to make things a little bit easier for you. And that's something that, although I did know how to ride a bicycle, I didn't bike every day. And I wasn't used to what it actually takes and what it means and sort of the nervousness of biking every day. So being in a country with great biking infrastructure and a strong biking culture, it's something that I would definitely make sure that you're getting used to that early on and before you move here, if you can, if you're going to move here in 2025. If I was moving here this year, I would also be sure that I'm comfortable engaging with Danes right away. I was so worried in the beginning that I was afraid that there would be a language barrier or that I wouldn't be able to just strike up conversations with people. Joining clubs, associations, and things like that, I felt out of place. I was nervous to do it. I didn't think that I could do it right away, but I would make a big change if I was moving here this year. And basically, I would just say yes to every invitation. I would try new things. I would get involved everywhere that I can. Yes, Danes have this reputation of being more reserved, but don't mistake that for being cold, because that's not true. Yes, of course, there are cold people in every culture. There are going to be people that are not interested in being friends wherever you move to. But if you're going to a group or an association, which there are a ton of in Denmark, it's very easy to meet people, to get involved. And it's a real part of Danish culture here. And it's something that I wish I didn't wait so long to do when I first moved here. I think you'll find that internationals will give you community, and it's very important that you have friends straight away. But making friends with Danes, that's what's going to help you to integrate. So don't wait until you feel ready. Start building your circle of both Danes and internationals straight away. Something I would get comfortable with right away if I was moving to Denmark this year is things about work culture that didn't rub me the right way at first. Some of that is flat hierarchies. The idea that your boss at work might eat lunch right next to you with your team, just like everybody else. I always felt this sort of uncomfortability being around the people that I reported to. And that's not what it's like here. And that's something that you'll kind of have a hard time with potentially, depending on where you come from. I also think work-life balance, it's very high valued here. But it's tough to turn off that mindset, especially for me when I came from the US. I almost thought it was a badge of honor to talk about how long I worked or to say, okay, I can work on that over the weekend and have it ready for you on Monday. And the people that I was working with were like, whoa, calm down. Don't be crazy. In fact, that doesn't really fit in here. I don't really like that vibe because you're making it feel like it's a pressure situation, and I don't want to be responsible for you doing that. There's a sense of trust that, hey, yeah, you know when this is due, so just work on it and get it to me at your time. And they're going to trust that if that's not possible because of other deadlines you have that they may not be aware of or other factors that you may not get it done that week, that you're going to be able to say to them, and they trust that you're going to bring to them, hey, I know that we wanted to have this done by the 15th, but I think it's more realistic for everybody if we can get this project finished by the end of the month. That way we can make sure we do it right. And this is why I think your deadline is not appropriate. That's not a bad thing. In fact, part of a flat hierarchy is that people trust you're going to be able to exist in that. And that may be very weird to kind of speak to authority and give them that feedback, but that's what they're expecting you to do. And it took me a little bit longer than I would have liked before I realized that. If I was moving to Denmark this year in 2025, another thing that I would make sure that I did is research a good GP or a good general practitioner, a good doctor when I first got here. Because when you get to Denmark, basically, you'll get your CPR number, which is just like a resident ID number, and then you'll be able to pick the doctor that you want to go to. If you don't do that, one in your area will be assigned to you. And that will be basically your main entry point into the healthcare system. So if you need to see a specialist, if you need to get a medication in the system and prescribed to you in Denmark, then you'll have to go to your GP. Look up reviews, ask in Facebook groups, ask in other forums for internationals so that you can make sure you're getting a good GP, because if not, there is a fee to change and it is possible, but you may, especially when you first get here and need to have some of those things done, say get some additional help the first few times that you're going to the doctor when you're not sure what to expect. It is really nice to have a GP that can kind of take care of your needs, and you'll be able to get some good recommendations by asking in your local online forum, whether it's a Facebook group or Reddit thread or something else. Find a community that's online where you can get an advice or some recommendations for a good GP. You will be very happy that you do that from the beginning. If I was moving to Denmark this year in 2025, something else that I would do very differently is exploring more of Denmark. Now, of course, I moved to Copenhagen like a lot of internationals do. And of course, the other big cities in Denmark are also home to international communities. However, there's a lot of cool places for you to explore. And I wish that straight out of the gate, I would have done that and visited other parts of Denmark outside of Copenhagen and outside of the specific area that I'm moving to. And I really think that that's good advice for anybody. Learn what it's like in other regions of Denmark. Go and visit places that are both rural and cities and the countryside and the islands, and just get to explore Denmark and see what Danish culture looks like and feels like and what the vibes are like in other places other than the city or the town in which you move to. Because like I said, everywhere has their own vibe, and you'll really enjoy it if you get to explore more of that. Of course, where you live is probably going to be determined by where you study or where you work, but it doesn't mean that you can't get out and visit more of Denmark, because there's so much to offer besides just the hotspots, the big cities, and the places where most people are moving to for work or to study. So that is something I absolutely would do differently if I was moving here in 2025. Another thing that I would do differently if I was moving here this year is I would immediately jump into all kinds of celebrations and traditions and holidays. I think that I took my first year really trying to observe, but I didn't really participate in some of these things. And I think that finding out how you can get more involved in celebrations that may not apply to you directly, like Festival, St. Hansaften, even a julefrokost. These words may make no sense to you if you have not moved here yet, but they're big cultural touch points. So getting to find out, or even to kind of hint to your coworkers, your friends, and say, hey, I don't really know what this is like. Can you tell me about St. Hansaften? What should I be doing? What are the traditions involved in that? And if you're invited to something, say yes. Don't feel like you can't go because you don't know every part of it, or because you're going to have a lot of questions. This is a great way for you to learn more about the culture, and it's a fast and easy way to connect, and I think that it's really important. I think often we are afraid to get involved with traditions that aren't our own because maybe they feel quirky or they feel like they're not for us, but really when you move to a new country, it can be a way to open doors socially and a way that you can make those connections with other people. If you tell people over the weekend, like, yes, I went to this event that is a Danish event and not something from my own culture, it's going to go a long way in making you feel like you want to be here, and that not just you want to be at your job or you want to be in your program of study, but that you really want to be part of Danish society, and that will go a long way. And it's something that people don't always do in the beginning, but joining it really shows that you want to be a participant in Denmark and not just an observer. And sometimes we wait too long to do that. I know that I did, and it's something that I wish I didn't do when I first moved here. But if I was moving here this year, I would absolutely do. There's so many cool Danish cultural traditions that you'll want to know about. And some of them I've even put in this video right here, where I talk about things that Danes do that are very cute, including where you may find Danish flags being waved at the airport. And that may make no sense at first, but it's something that I really enjoy and you can learn more about in this video. So check it out and let me know what you think. And thanks for watching, everybody. Hi.